OOP's Phil asks what would happen if they were the same age. I am not OOP. OOP is Midnight Maiden. Originally posted to 2 hot takes. Trigger warning. Talk of abuse, animal abuse. Less than. Phil asks what would happen if we were the same age December 2022. I, F27, have been married to my husband, M27, for almost 2 years. Together for almost 4. My Mill married her husband, M47, about 3 months after our wedding. Step Phil was Mill's neighbor. So the entire time he's known me, he's only known me as my partner's girlfriend, fiancé, wife. Step Phil even did our premarital counseling. I have a really good relationship with my in-laws. We talk on the phone with them several times a week and visit them every month or so. Today they came to visit us. My husband and his mom went out to lunch together for some one-on-one time, while I went to get coffee and lunch with my Step Phil. While we were sitting in the coffee shop, Step Phil said, "I have a strange question to ask you. Don't take this the wrong way." Essentially, he asked if I thought anything would happen between us if he were my age. I said, "I don't know. I think we would get so close that we could only ever be platonic friends. Ya know, someone that you couldn't imagine being anything but friends." Then he started telling me about how it probably wouldn't work because of how he treated women in his 20s. But if he had the same mindset that he did in his 40s, things might be different. For background, Step Phil has always been very affectionate towards me, calling me beautiful or princess and holding me in long hugs. But having grown up without a father and him having a strained relationship with his own daughter, I always thought he was just trying to create the type of father-daughter relationship he thought we both wanted. We carried on with the rest of the day as normal, and I told my husband about this conversation once the in-laws left, but I'm not sure what to make of this situation or where to go from here. Relevant comments from OOP. My husband is pissed. He's worried for my safety and for his mom. We haven't told Mill yet. We plan to talk to her at some point, but we're not sure when exactly. Phil used to be a pastor and a counselor, so he's been telling us about how he's trying to help Mill work through years of trauma and rebuild her confidence. That was actually the reason for the visit. Phil told Mill it was important to share her experiences with her son so they could work through any generational traumas together. And we were going to go out for coffee and lunch to give them space to talk. Though now I'm obviously unsure if his intentions were genuine or it was a chance to get me alone. We're worried this will only hurt Mill more. We're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. He was understandably mad and kept saying he wants to fight Phil. He said he trusts me, but he's worried for my safety and his mom. We already have plans to see them over Christmas and New Year's, so we agreed that we'll call Phil this week and set some boundaries. And I will no longer be alone with him. Update December 2022. I've had a handful of people follow my account after I posted this story, so I figured I should update, though it won't be much. So my husband and I waited a couple of days to call Step Phil. He works from home and Mill works in an office, so that gave us the space to assess the situation without upsetting her. I had my husband call because I was too uncomfortable to have this talk. Husband did record the conversation in case we need it, but of course, Step Phil denied any romantic, sexual feelings towards me. Step Phil said he meant it in a platonic way, but he sees how he messed up and crossed a line. I don't know if I believe him. Something still doesn't sit right with me about the initial conversation. It's called everything he's done into question. If he meant it platonically, why did he leave it so open-ended? He never said the word friends. Why would he then go on to tell me how he treated women like sexual objects? What makes it worse is that Step Phil told my husband he had a feeling he would eventually get a call about the situation. If he realized he messed up, why wouldn't he take the initiative to clear it up? The optimist in me really hopes he just made a stupid mistake. But the pessimist in me feels like he's been mulling this over for a while and he decided to strike. While I was vulnerable, I just had a miscarriage in November and we just bought a house that we discovered is riddled with problems. So needless to say, it's been a rough time. My husband feels the same in hoping that it was a mistake, but worried it's much deeper than that. I don't know if Mill knows. We've talked to her a couple of times since and she hasn't said anything. I'm scared of hurting her if it really was a stupid mistake on Step FIL's end. If he does anything else that raises a red flag, we'll see about talking to her. We planned for the in-laws to come visit for Christmas this weekend, but we're having plumbing problems so we canceled. Have to laugh about the timing, though we are going to stay with them for New Year's. My therapist helped me plan out some boundaries and buffers so I can steer clear of Step FIL as much as possible. That's all I've got for now. I'm praying I don't need to make another update, but we'll see. Relevant comment from Oop. The timeline isn't super clear to me, but from what he told me while we were at the coffee shop, which by the way included an overview of how he lost his virginity. He was a player his first year or two in college. Then he went into seminary. Update the 2nd of January 21, 2023. Hey, everyone. My husband suggested I update you all on our awkward situation. So we went to stay with my in-laws for a belated Christmas, New Year's celebration. All in all, it was an okay time. For the first few hours, Step FIL wouldn't even look my way. But I focused my attention on catching up with my Bill and Step Sil or playing with their puppy. At some point, Step FIL took his daughter out for some one-on-one time. That's when Mill told us she didn't know exactly what happened, but she knew something had happened between us, saying Step FIL wanted to reconcile, but he was too upset. He had other issues going on at the same time. I wanted to tell Mill about the situation then, but my husband shook his head, so we left it at that. We did, however, start talking about Step FIL's emotional state. We said we felt he was too rough on their puppy and Mill said he once got so mad at the puppy that he thought about throwing it down a flight of stairs. That jogged a memory for me. Once I was driving with Step FIL to go pick up his daughter and he told me about a time he got so mad at a kitten that he actually strangled it. I've since talked to my therapist about the potential animal abuse and husband and I have talked about whether or not we think Mill is in danger. We haven't noticed any signs that Mill is being abused, but she grew up in an abusive household, so we're trying to be super observant in case she's trying to hide it. When it was time to say goodbye at the end of the weekend, there was an awkward lull as I tried to figure out how I would say goodbye to Step FIL. I decided to give him a brief hug and thankfully he didn't hold on. He just put an arm around me for a second and said, "Get home safe." Well, that was a few weeks ago and husband and I were feeling comfortable about being low contact with Step FIL. That is, until Step FIL snapped me the other day. It was a video of him driving. Yes, he is constantly on his phone while driving, and singing along to a Christian rap song. After a minute of singing, he said something to the effect of, "Here's some music to get you going for the day. Jamming for Jesus. By the way, I love you and I hope you're having a good day." Quote, I didn't respond. Today, my husband called his mom and she told him that she now knows exactly what happened. She said she feels for all of us, but acknowledges that what he said was inexcusable. After that phone call, she sent my husband a bit from a podcast about emotional immaturity and how people sometimes revert back to their old selves when recalling a traumatic experience. For context, when we were at the coffee shop during the original incident, Step FIL told me how he lost his virginity. He told me the woman who took his virginity laughed and mocked him for it. That's what Mill was referring to when talking about emotional immaturity. I'm not sure why she's not including me in these conversations. I talked to her today, but we never talked about the situation. This evening, Step Phil snapped me again. This time it was him driving and singing along to that Taylor Swift song Anti-Hero. You know the line. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Relevant comments from Oop. I've always been a people pleaser. Something I'm currently working on in therapy. I hugged him to prevent any further problems. Especially since Mill didn't know yet and we weren't sure how we should tell her. I knew not hugging him would raise questions when I just wanted to get out of there. I'm well aware of how abusers operate. I'm well aware of the stages and escalation of grooming and abuse. That's all part of my job. I've spoken about this to my therapist as well as colleagues that have experience dealing with abusers. We all agreed that while it was creepy, inappropriate and definitely rang some alarm bells, it's still in a gray area. He never said anything that definitively confirmed his intentions towards me. That in mind, he has a level of deniability that's made it hard for us to justify totally cutting them off. Just because I hugged him doesn't mean I was covering for him. I said in my first update that I told my husband, who called Step Phil out on this behavior. We were waiting to see if anything else would happen before we tried to work out how to tell my Mill. Step Phil ended up telling her. So she knows now. I also plan to tell my Bill because I don't want his new girlfriend to experience the same thing. Aside from visiting for New Year's, I haven't spoken to Step Phil since. I used to talk to my in-laws several times a week. Now all of his messages get left on read. He knows he messed up. At no point did I intend to hide this or keep it to myself. I was just biding my time so I could better assess the situation. I know he was diagnosed with low testosterone a few months back. I think he might be reeling from the diagnosis, wanting to feel young again. Early on in our engagement, my now husband said he felt like Step Phil was getting flirty. Step Phil has always been very friendly and outgoing with people in general, and my husband has always been a little paranoid, so I didn't think much of it at the time. Update 3 February 5, 2023, posted in r. Just No Phil. Some of you might have seen this story if you frequent the Too Hot Takes subreddit, but I thought I should post it here too. So the weekend before Christmas, my in-laws came to visit. My husband, M27, went to have lunch 111 with his mom, F50. So I, F27, went to get coffee and lunch with her husband, my SFIL, M47. I've always been close to my in-laws. Up until this incident, we used to talk to them several times throughout the week and visit them every 13 months. I saw them as not just my in-laws, but also my friends. Growing up without a father, I always thought SFIL was trying to be a father figure to me. He would always hold me in long hugs and call me beautiful or princess. Well, while SFIL and I were getting coffee, he asked me if I thought anything would happen between us if we were the same age. Being the people pleaser that I am, I tried to find a polite way to draw a line in the sand. So I said, I think we would get so close that we could only ever be friends. He then told me about how he used to treat women poorly in his 20s, which he said stems from how he lost his virginity. Yes, he told me how he lost his virginity. We went about the day as normal, but once the in-laws left, I told my husband what had happened. He was understandably livid at his stepfather and concerned for his mom. We decided it would be best to wait a few days and have DH call SFIL. Then we would decide whether or not to tell Mill. He did record the conversation just to be safe, but of course SFIL said he meant the question platonically. though he understood how his intentions were unclear. SFIL even said he had a feeling he would be getting a call about the situation, which strikes me as odd since he didn't think to clarify, apologize sooner. We were supposed to host them for Christmas, but fate was sort of on our side as we had plumbing issues and couldn't accommodate guests for a while. We did end up staying over New Year's and it went alright overall. SFIL wouldn't look at or speak to me for the first few hours. Not that I was complaining. SFIL has a 16-year-old daughter from a previous marriage who was visiting as well. They have their own issues, so at one point, he took his daughter out for some one-on-one time. While they were gone, my Mill told us she didn't know exactly what happened, but she knew something had happened. I wanted to tell her, but DH asked me not to just yet. We did, however, talk about SFIL's emotional state. He was very irritable all weekend. Mill told us he was dealing with anger issues and even said he got so mad at their puppy that he'd had thoughts of throwing it down the stairs. We're keeping an eye out to see if Mill is in any danger. The rest of the visit was uneventful. When it was time to say goodbye, SFIL gave me a quick side hug, which was a relief to me. We went a few weeks without talking to SFIL until he started sending me messages on Snapchat. It's not uncommon for him to take videos of himself driving and singing along to music, and those were the kinds of things he was snapping me. The first video, he said, "Here's a song to get you going today. Jamming for Jesus. Love you." I didn't respond. A few days later, the song was Anti-Hero by Taylor Swift. You know the lyrics. "It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me." I didn't respond. Around the same time, my Mill told DH she knew exactly happened, saying she felt for all of us in this situation. After they got off the phone, Mill sent DH a snippet of a podcast that mentioned how people sometimes revert back to their former selves when recalling traumatic experiences, referencing how SFIL lost his virginity, and that could be why he asked me that question. A couple of days later, SFIL sent me another snap of just a song title displayed in his car. The song was called Misconceptions. We've maintained our silence, but today SFIL sent us a text blaming Satan for this divisive misunderstanding, telling us we need to sit down and talk with him so we can reconcile. Then he said he missed talking to me, especially about problems going on in his own life. Relevant comments. G0S211 commented, "When was the last time SFIL had a medical checkup? Could be one or more health issues are adding to this. Onset of dementia, depression, UTIs sometimes come with neurosymptoms." Oop replied, "I know he was recently diagnosed with low testosterone. I think the initial conversation was a way for him to feel young again. See if he's still got it. Ya know?" Fauci and Fire commented, "Anyone else worried about the daughter in this situation? I DK about y'all, but I got hella creeped out from the one-on-one time with his 16-year-old daughter, given that he tried to hit on you." Oop replied, "His relationship with his daughter and ex-wife is a whole other can of worms. At some point his daughter did accuse him of grooming her, but she then said her mother had coached her to say those things. His actions are in a weird space where it's definitely creepy, but not concrete enough where I think DCS would take it seriously. I am not the oop. What kind of person hears someone strangled a kitten and not only doesn't tell their mutual family people but forgets about it? Who has their stepfather do their counseling? That's so inappropriate. And then when they hit on you, not shut it down? Note: in no way saying op in this situation is the scary one. Just finding the situation bizarre and wondering if they are part of some sort of community which has warped their idea of what is normal, because no one seems to be reacting as I would expect. Strangled a kitten. Accused of grooming his daughter. Totally inappropriate behavior towards his SDIL. Obviously a keeper, S. Seriously though, this would be anxious and nervous. That man is a veritable ocean of red flags, and I would be concerned for Mill's safety. Doesn't everyone know that people who hurt animals, strangling a kitten, are wired wrong and people you don't want in your life? What on earth? Why would she and her husband keep interacting with this man? And of course he's a pastor. Gross. All of it. I would advise to stay well away from Step Phil and continue to keep an eye on Mill. The way he treats animals is a major red flag. Yeesh. After the kitten, this would be a no-go for me. Christian creeps are so predictable. Premarital counseling. So he can creep on young couples? Check. Counseling. Where the counselor unloads their traumas onto the counselee. Check. Marrying a victim of abuse. So he can save them. Which somehow involves them reliving their trauma. And also he's the biggest victim? Check. Creeping on young girls. With looning hugs and edgy, creepy hip with the youth memes. Jokes and comments? Check. Gets caught and plays the victim. Tragically misunderstood. Tragic past. Whoa whoa whoa? Check. Gets caught. And suddenly it's all Satan's fault? Check. 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 Let's see now. Sinner's Recovery Bingo. Christian Creeps Special Edition. Asks target of sexual harassment to pray with him. Insists on discussing his sins. By which we mean his detailed sexual history with other women. Plus all of his sexual fantasies about the target. With his target, somehow, he cannot recover from his sinfulness without sexually harassing his target again. I'm sorry, confessing, or counseling, or praying with her. Cries on her and expects her to comfort him. Trauma dumps on her and expects her to comfort him. Ends it all with even more long hugs. Because creeps gotta creep. Did I miss any? What do y'all think Step Phil will try next? Is Phil trying to go for the long con? I didn't know Snapchat messages are called snaps. I kept thinking Phil was crazy violent aggressive. Not sending DMs, and why send messages after the ambiguous talk caused relationships to be strained. Does anyone else feel like Phil is gaslighting Mill? Like he got ahead of the problem by telling her his version first. Which okay, I get. But then Mill sending the podcast about emotional immaturity. Like she didn't come up with that on her own. That phrase is something a therapist, counselor uses to explain your problems to you. Doesn't sound like he's going to therapy, so he, self-diagnosing, which is such BS. I feel like Phil is just whipping that out as an excuse to keep behaving as inappropriately as he still is. Mill needs to GTFO. ETA. Also feels like Oop is ignoring obvious red flags. His daughter accused him of grooming her. This combined with what he's been doing to Oop. All the signs are telling you WHO he is stop ignoring them. This is why I am extremely leery of Christian, faith-based mental health counselors. Especially men. I grew up surrounded by men like this in our church. Men who touted themselves as enlightened leaders but just exuded the creep vibe. It's almost like a worldview based entirely around sexual repression and misogyny breeds really unhealthy people or something. Hold up. Backtrack to the part where he's a pastor and counselor trying to help his wife work through trauma. That is a massive red flag. Counselors have very firm lose your license to practice limits on dual relationships. You don't establish personal relationships with clients. And you don't provide professional services with friends, family, etc. If he actually was an ethical counselor of any kind, pastoral or otherwise, he'd get her an unrelated therapist and stay out of that process. This is the kind of man who's trying to use religion fix himself, assure himself he's okay. He needs to talk to a therapist about his issues, not his dill. This is seriously one of the creepiest stories, and I feel very concerned for everyone involved. With SFIL, I feel like OOP is in that clouded headspace of partial denial where the lack of blatant evidence of a crime is equal to a gray area where one need be less concerned about danger as a result. Meanwhile, I'm seeing a very nervous and unhinged bear mingle with other smaller animals out for a frolic in the park, all of them aware of the bear's size, presence and sudden exaggerated movements, but mostly still assume they are safe because he hasn't ripped any of their heads off yet. And in the distance, if you listen carefully, you can hear the barely audible sound of frantic mewing. Then deafening silence. This could be the origin story for that creepy priest guy in Poltergeist 2. Remember him? Step Phil said, "I have a strange question to ask you. Don't take this the wrong way. My fight or flight reaction would kick in instantly, LMAO. At this point, I would say to Mill, I am uncomfortable ever being around or in contact with Step Phil again. His advances and repeated messages are inappropriate and unacceptable. I am hopeful we can continue our relationship without him. And that would be my one and only word on the subject. This man is dangerous, even if he's being sneaky about it right now. And quite frankly, it's not up to OOP and her husband to protect Mill by sacrificing their own safety. If she chooses to stay with a husband who has been violent towards animals, groomed a child, and is continually making unwelcome advances to her son's wife, then she's made her bed and can lie in it without them holding her hand. I think her mom coached her to say that the grooming thing was just something her mom coached her to say, so they would never have to deal with, expose her dad for the creep he is. OOP needs to stop associating with him ASAP. Geez. Mill says she knows what happened, but does she know the truth or the version that her husband told her? Anyone else getting Steve Powell father-in-law to missing, realistically dead, Susan Powell vibes? This is a predator. He knows exactly what he was doing. He is gaslighting her to the extreme. He was trying to start a sexual relationship with her, considering she saw him as a father figure. And he has issues with violence and how he treats women. I am terrified for his daughter. Yeah, the minute a guy tells me he strangled a kitten, I don't care who he is, he's out of my life for good.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.